All right, so back to the story. As I said, in 2020, I was with my grandpa, and my grandpa's telling me I was in Washington, staying at my grandpa's. My grandpa was like telling me how everything is synergy. You know, the universe, life is an anti-entropic rotary function. And he was saying in order for me to stay with him, that I have to get a job because, it'll help me get in synergy and be a part of the anti-entropic rotary function, and I'll transcend the self and all that stuff. But I'm telling my grandpa, I was like, I was telling my grandpa, can you please help me talk to my mom and dad? And my grandpa was like, well, you see, you don't understand, Ryan. Because you're not working, they resent you and you resent them. And I'm like, Grandpa, that's not the reason why they're not talking to me. The problems happen in high school, and it happened because of the shoot away machine, and it was because dad missed my shot. My grandpa's like, again, he blames the victim. He's like, well, Ryan, if you were in the flow, it wouldn't matter if you were shooting on the shoot away machine. Sean Marion had a messed up shot, but he's still a good shooter. If you're in the flow, it wouldn't have mattered. No, it did matter, because my grandpa doesn't realize that the best shooters, and the way I shot when I was the best, is I stick my left foot out, and it's about how you move into the shot. But you can't move into the shot correctly picking the ball off a rack. So I'm like, Grandpa, you don't know what you're talking about. But I asked my grandpa, if I was playing basketball, would that be anti-entropic rotary function? She was like, yeah, they're a part of the anti-entropic rotary function. And I'm like, well, Grandpa, you're the one who's to blame, because if it, your whole thing was make Ryan independent. And Mom was like, yeah, make him independent, get him out of our lives. And my dad wouldn't talk to me. But I was like, if you guys would have just helped me, first off, if Mom wouldn't have thrown away my raps, I would have been a famous rapper. If you guys would have helped me get back into basketball, I would have been making more raps, because I could always write raps when I'm playing basketball. And I showed that when I was with Francisco, and I went to Kansas City. And I could write raps because I was nervous because I was far away. But if I'm playing basketball, I could always write raps. And I discovered theory of everything. I was like, if you guys would have just helped me, but my grandpa was like, well, Ryan really wants his independence, because if he's independent, because he's an Ayn Rand fan, if he's independent, then he'll be a part of the synergy. But the thing was, if my mom and dad would have just talked to me and helped me, then I would have probably been independent. I wanted to get basketball videos so I could study, I would have fixed my shot earlier. I could, if they just would have been on my side. But instead, like I said, my grandpa came in after the shoot. I messed up my shot. My grandpa did not help. He's like, Ryan just wants independence. Ryan, everything's fine. Then my mom and, like I said, I feel like my grandpa hurt things. He made my mom and dad, my mom was like, yeah, everything's just fine. You can't change anything, Ryan. You can't get your way. And then when I get into college and I discovered theory of everything, I try to show my mom, oh, you're schizophrenic. And I try to talk to my dad. After I graduate from college, my mom was like, you're never going to talk to you. You can't get your way. You have to accept that. Because my grandpa's like, Ryan, in high school, because of shoot away, Ryan, you just have to accept. So my point is, my grandpa messed up everything, but I don't want to just blame my grandpa, because my grandpa would be like, oh, yeah, blame me. Oh, just blame me then. Oh. So then I'll be like, no, it's not just you, dude. It was a shoot away machine. If dad would have never got the shoot away machine, but my point though is this too. I don't need to blame anyone. All I'm saying is, hey guys, it's over. I discovered the theory of everything. It's not a tragedy. You guys are trying to make it out like it's a tragedy. My life. I just want some help, because I discovered the theory of everything. Things should be great. Just help me get back into basketball, or just help me get the quadrant model out. Just help me in any way. I'd like to talk to mom and dad. But my grandpa's like, well, the one thing is your dad's never going to talk to you about basketball because he hates basketball. I'm like, I want to talk to my dad about basketball. It's not a big deal. But the reason he hates basketball is because he messed up my shot. It caused problems. But it's over now. Now let's move on. Why can't we just be mature adults? And what I want to say is my mom and dad are stupid. That's what I want to say. They're just stupid because they just take my grandpa's teachings and they just memorize it. And even when I was in high school, when my mom forced me to see a psychologist at my high school, the psychologist told me, I was like, I said, my mom and dad are stupid. He was like, yeah, your mom and dad are stupid. He admitted it. He was like, yeah, your mom and dad are stupid. Because my mom and dad were stupid, But my grandpa would teach, never call anybody stupid because that's judgmental. Always just use the word ignorant because they're ignoring their higher wisdom. And another thing my grandpa would teach is he'd say, and never say sorry, because if you say sorry, it doesn't mean anything. And when you forgive people, you're not forgiving the person, because there is no person. You forgive the person in the sense that you recognize that he is not, that it was his software that was the problem, but he is not his software, and he can upgrade his software. Now I understand what he was saying. It's not the person's fault, it's the software's fault, but people can upgrade their software. But these are things that my grandpa taught me. But anyways, he confused me, though. because he didn't teach me the details. Because he seemed anti-religious, but then, so I became more anti-religious, but he wasn't anti-religious. You know, he was talking about seeing everything as one, but I didn't understand, you know, but my grandpa just confused me. So, but anyways, so my grandpa's like, you know, if you're just part of the synergy, you just work hard and, you know, then everything will be fine. But I'm like, Grandpa, I discovered theory of everything. He's like, there's no evidence for that. If you discovered theory of everything, it would be on the news. No, not necessarily, because I discovered theory of everything and it's not on the news. So, but anyways, I'm trying to get some help. But in my mind, my grandpa's like, again, one of his things was like, you know, the Buddhists, they would just carry water as a ritual, carry water on their backs, and they'd walk upstairs, and that helps you get outside of yourself. And these rituals take you outside of yourself so you can transcend. And I understand what he's talking about now, but at the time, like I said, I thought that he was just, his whole like work hard thing and stuff is just white supremacy, like get people to work. So in my mind, so I like I said, I wanted to undermine the Bible because I saw the Bible and Christianity as white supremacy. I was a Marxist. I thought that Christianity maintained the social order, maintained the status quo, and I wanted to destroy the status quo because I saw myself as Jewish and I wanted to mix the white people and I wanted to destroy society. So when my grandpa was like, my grandpa saying, you know, yeah, just work hard and everything. So I was looking at the Bible and I'm like, okay, you know, Solomon, he gets the Gentiles to work for him. He gets the Gentiles to, so in my mind, I was like, yeah, if you white people, you know, like the Hittites and stuff, has them help build the temple. And like, you know, even the Jews, when Paul, when he converts the Gentiles, he has them be servants. And, you know, my grandpa would say, yeah, that's good because they're working, so they're taking it outside stuff. But in my mind, I was like, yeah, maybe the Gentiles, the white people, should work for the Jews so the Jews can study and the black people can play basketball and they should work for them and they should be the slaves of the people of color. So that the Jews and stuff can work, we can study and the blacks can play basketball and rap and stuff and you guys work for us. If you're so into working hard, because that's what it says in the Bible. Solomon had the Gentiles, like the Hittites and stuff, build the temple for him. And I was like, and the same thing happened with Christianity. In my mind, I was like, Christianity was just a trick to just, because I wanted to destroy Christianity in order to destroy the white race, because I saw myself as Jewish. So I was like, yeah, you know, Christianity was just, you know, basically what Jesus did was he said that I'm going to make your enemies into a footstool. And I was like, that's what he did with Christianity. He made the white people, the Indo-Europeans into the Jews' footstool by telling them, hey, you know, we gave you spiritual blessings. We gave you Christianity. Now you give us material blessings. And you guys take care of us and you guys give us Israel. So I was like, it was just a Darwinian trick. And that's what Jesus did. And, you know, and that's when they converted the Gentiles, you know, Paul was just like, yeah, just give us your resources. And, you know, and when Paul was converting them, he was like, yeah, and you made them into servants and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, you guys are supposed to be servants. And I looked at Paul, like Peter, even I looked down upon Peter, who's like the progenitor of the Catholic Church, because Jesus, you know, Peter always believed, but then at the end, Jesus was like, yeah, just feed my sheep and stuff. And I was like, yeah, because belief is not the flow. And yeah, just feed a sheep, just be a servant. Because if you're a believer, you're a servant. But the Jews aren't believers. We're the knowers. That's why we don't believe. But you know, you white people who believe the second quadrant, you're the second quadrant. White people are the second quadrant, but the Jews, the brown people are the fourth quadrant. And we're the knowers. And so you believers, your second quadrant is a servant. They're the homeostasis. So you white people should be servants. And us, the Jews, we should be, you know, just studying and playing basketball. Like I want to play basketball. And man, you guys should take care of us, right? That's the way that I saw it. Because, you know, and I always looked down upon white people. I wanted to mix the white people. And that's why I wanted to promote, you know, and that's why I wanted to destroy Christianity. And I wanted to promote rap music and basketball. And, you know, but the thing is, like, I really am good at basketball and rap music. But that's what I wanted to promote. Because I had an anti-white agenda. I was a Marxist. So, but anyways, yeah. So like I said, I started hanging out, you know, during the pandemic with a lot of Jewish people, like hippies, kind of like, you know, a lot of drug addicts, you know, race mixing. Jews tend to love race mixing. And then I went to Chabad in New York. And like I said, when I went to Chabad in New York, you know, I call my mom and I tell my mom about it. My mom's like, you can't be in Chabad in New York. You're mentally ill. You have schizophrenia. No, I don't have schizophrenia. The people there are fine with me. But she's like, well, just don't act crazy. Don't start yelling at people. Because my mom, she hasn't seen me in 20 years. So my mom just thinks I'm a schizophrenic freak. That I'm like running around being crazy, yelling at people, talking about Quadrimal, just being crazy. She hasn't seen me in 20 years. So these are her assumptions about me. She's like, you're just gonna yell at people, and you can't be over there. You can't. My mom just wants me to. She thinks that I just need to be in my, like I said, when she thinks I should just be in my apartment and just. When she took me to the psychiatrist, you know, she was like, I don't want anything to do with him. I just want him out of my life. I want him to be independent. Again, my mom wasn't there. She's talking on the phone because she hasn't seen me in 20 years. Maybe if she would see me and interact with me, she would see I'm not crazy. But, you know, but then the psychiatrist is like, how can you talk about your son like that? But my mom's like, what? But that's what his grandpa taught. Because like I said, my grandpa just made things worse. My grandpa always made things worse. His teachings did not help. So then, but she's like, what? My mom was like, what? But my mom was like, well, and then they were like, well, you know, Ryan wants to go to get a master's degree. You know, you don't want to help him? And mom was like, he can't. He has schizophrenia. He needs to be on Social Security. And then the psychiatrist was like, whoa. Oh, so you're trying to get him into psych wards so that you can put him on Social Security. That's the reason? She was like, that's really bad. And she was like, you know, we have to note that you could get in trouble for that. So they told my mom, you have to stop doing that. And they told her that. And then they forced my mom to stop trying to force me into psych wards to see psychiatrists. But my mom was like, you know, you can't work. You have schizophrenia, you know. But then ironically, so then I'm writing my based on true story book, and I'm basically writing how I think that my grandpa's kind of a white supremacist, and how he, his whole, like, his preoccupation with working hard and stuff is really just white supremacy and stuff. That's the way I saw it. And then, but then my mom, you know, interpreted that as, so then my mom starts to be like, you know, at first she's like, you know, you can't work, you're schizophrenic. And then she's like, well, I just hate you, and I'm never going to talk to you because your grandpa's right. It's because I resent, because I just want, you know, you should get a fucking job, you fucking parasite, you fucking freak loser. And again, so I tell my grandpa about this, and my grandpa's like, yeah, your mom doesn't get it. It's predator prey software, saying get a job, that's predator prey software. She doesn't get it. She's predatory. She's very immature. But my mom thinks that she's doing my grandpa's teaching, because I'm writing my based on true story book, saying how my grandpa says my mom misunderstands. You know, so my mom's like, you know, I just want you to get a fucking job. That's it. I just want you out of my life to be independent. But my grandpa's like, yeah, she doesn't get it. So then, like I said, I went to New York. And my mom's like, you can't go to New York. You can't be at the yeshiva there. You have schizophrenia. You're going to start yelling at people, and you're going to be going crazy. She hasn't seen me in 20 years. I'm talking to her on the phone. She hasn't seen me in 20 years. And whenever she talks to me on the phone, like I said, she's just very cold, callous. She just hangs up on me. If I ever try to talk about anything, I want to talk about basketball. She's like, no, talk about the fucking past. No one cares about basketball. Or she'd go, okay, fine. Okay, this should be a missed shot. Who cares? But she doesn't really believe it. She doesn't accept it. And then she'll just be like, and I'll be like, well, can I talk to Dad? No, he's never going to talk to you. Well, if you understand that it wasn't my fault, maybe my dad would talk to me. But anyways, my mom and dad are stupid. Their bad parents are stupid. So I'm trying to, you know, I go to New York, and then I study at the yeshiva for a little bit. Then I come back to Los Angeles because I couldn't have my car there. And then I ended up going to studying at Utah. But then on my way back to Los Angeles, my grandma was dying of cancer, of a kidney cancer. So I went to visit my grandma in Washington with my grandpa, and my dad was there, but then my dad hid when I got there. And then my grandpa and I got in an argument because I wanted to see my dad. And then my grandpa kicked me out, and my grandpa told me, he was like, the only reason why I was teaching you is because your grandma made me teach you, but I'm not going to teach you anymore. So my grandpa stopped teaching me. And again, like, but I wanted to talk to my dad, and but you know, I feel like my grandpa was always trying to justify my dad by not teaching me. He'd be like, yeah, you know, it's your software. I'm not going to teach you. But, you know, I just wanted to talk to my dad. I was being abandoned. I'm thrown to the side. I want to talk to my grandpa, but they're not talking to me, you know? So, and my grandpa just left me in the dirt because I wanted to understand metapsychiatry. He confused me. So like I said, I'm anti-religious, but in my mind, I'm like, well, my grandpa's anti-religious. But he's not really. But I was just confused. And like, I think that I'm transcending dualistic software. I'm like, Grandpa, I mean, I am in the flow, but he didn't teach me well. So I'm thinking like, I did transcend the ego. I want race mixing. I did transcend the ego, but I didn't understand that wanting race mixing wasn't transcending the ego. You know? So I didn't understand. My grandpa just confused me. You know, his whole spirituality stuff just confused the shit out of me. But I wanted to understand. So I wanted to study with him more, and I wanted to learn more. But he was like, I'm not interested. You know, the only reason why I taught you was because your grandma made me. But now that she's dead, you know, I'm not going to teach you anymore. Just like your dad. You know, I'm not going to talk to you just like your dad. So I'm trying to talk to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, can you please have Grandpa help teach me? Can you please tell Grandpa to study with me? You know, ask him to study with me. Mom was like, if people don't want anything to do with you, you have to accept that, Ryan. You have to fucking accept it. Your dad doesn't want anything to do with you, neither does anybody, neither does your grandpa. No one wants anything to do with you. You have to accept it. So, you know, so then I'm stuck at this point, and I could be, and they're all, you know, like I said, I told my grandpa. My grandpa was like, I told my grandpa, I was like, Grandpa, it was the shoot away machine. That was the problem. My grandpa was like, well, Ryan, if, you know, Sean Marion had a weird shot. No, Sean Marion, he stepped into shots right. He moved into shots right. He had a broken arm. That's why he had a weird looking shot. But he moved into shots right. The best shooters move into shots correctly, but I couldn't do that with the shoot away machine. But I'm trying to tell my grandpa, I'm trying to tell him, like, listen, you're so into this whole thing of like make Ryan independent. I could be independent if you guys weren't so into make Ryan independent and throw him to the side. You know, mom and dad. He's like, well, your mom and dad misinterpreted that. You know, I didn't tell them to throw you to the side, but regardless, they misinterpreted it, whatever. But if you guys would just help me, I discovered a theory of everything. I could have done big with rap. If you guys help me get back into basketball, I could be making raps. I always write raps when I'm playing basketball. But my grandpa did not help me. Everyone just threw me to the side. You know, if they want me to be independent, I discovered a theory of everything. You know, and same thing with my grandpa. He could have taught me more rather than just always, because like I said, for years he wouldn't teach me. If he wanted me to understand, he should have taught me more. But he didn't know how to teach. He taught me bad. So he just made me confused. He's teaching me the spiritual stuff, but not enough just enough to make me confused. So it was a bad situation. But okay, so I went to New York and then I came back. And then, like I said, I wanted to get basketball videos when I was younger so I could help to fix my shot. And I could, you know, study the swag flow and study all this stuff. Like I said, I wish that my parents would have helped me in 2013 with that. But they wouldn't talk to me. They threw me to the side. They made me go to Kauai, you know. So I get a hold of my friend Malik, and I get a hold of and he tells me that his dad has gone crazy, but his dad has my DVDs, but I want to get the DVDs. So I tell him, listen, I'll give your dad a lot of money. So he gets a hold of his dad. He first says he can't get a hold of his dad, but then he gets a hold of his dad. And then his dad gets a hold of me and he says to meet him. But apparently he had been, he was P. Diddy's bodyguard. And he was telling me that P. Diddy was a homosexual and he was a rapist and stuff. And he was telling me that Pat Barrett, the guy who ran SCA, was a rapist and everything. And he's telling me all this stuff, and he's telling, and basically he's on the run, but he's kind of going crazy. You know, he had been P. Diddy's bodyguard and stuff. He's kind of going crazy at this point, and he's acting crazy. But I wanted to get the basketball videos of when I was younger so I could study the basketball videos, so I'll get to that.